Hey guys, welcome back to the Aspie World podcast. And as you already heard, if you are subscribed and you are listening to this, then you're awesome. But if you listen to us and you're not subscribed, what are you doing? Make sure to hit the subscribe button and follow along with all of these episodes that come out daily, by the way. Yes, I'm that crazy. All right, guys, today I have a really cool guest. Actually, I was quite excited to speak to this guest when I was given the bio, and it's because I'm really into kind of like a lot of the old school kind of philosophy of mindfulness and kind of like the old almost Buddhist teachings of therapy to help with mental health, which I use a lot in my own training. So I'm very excited to speak to Sharon Niv, which is a really difficult name to remember how to pronounce, but I'll let her introduce herself without no further ado. Please just tell us a little about yourself, Sharon, and let us know kind of who you are, what you do, and that kind of thing.
Awesome. Well, first of all, thank you, Daniel, and you got my name perfect, and it is all good. I am a cognitive psychologist and a co-founder of a company called Joyous Public Benefits Corporation.
Amazing.
So we are active in the US at this time and in 28 states. And what we do is prescribe a very low dose regimen of ketamine. It could be thought of as microdose. There's like some debate about whether microdose means subperceptual, and these doses are not subperceptual. You'll
Hmm.
feel them, but they're
Of
not
course.
like the high dose dissociative
Yes,
psychedelic
gonna knock
experience.
you on your
They're,
bum, is
they're
it?
mild.
Yeah,
No, not these doses.
for sure.
Um, yeah, and so we're generally treating anxiety, depression, and trauma. But there's some
That's amazing.
really interesting aspects of ketamine when it comes to neurodivergence and specifically autism relevant to the Aspie world. So I thought it could be an interesting conversation.
Amazing, yes, and I'm very excited. So I don't know if you know my background as well, but I'm also a chemist. So
Oh,
I'm I'm a trained counselor, a level two counselor in counseling from the UK. But I'm
nice.
also a chemist as well, and I'm a coach. So I'm a mentor and a coach. So all of what you're saying really resonates with me because because I have autism and ADHD, I do have medication. So I take a stimulant for ADHD, which is incredible, and I take an RI for the kind of emotional regulation on the autism side, right?
Yeah,
And so,
yeah.
but what's really interesting, Sharon, is that for almost all of my life, right up until 2020, I didn't take any medication. And I was not against it, but I just felt like I have this, I have the power to do what I want to do. And then I realized, oh my goodness, I need help, And then I was introduced slowly to different medicines, and I was like, wow, like the difference meds made to my life, just for me, just for focus, just like that, and to being able to get things done, incredibly changed how I view the world and how I was able to kind of be in my own reality. So that was kind of cool. So, ketamine is a really interesting one because in the United Kingdom, a lot of the younger people take ketamine as a recreational illegal substance, right?
Yeah.
Now, I know, and I'm pretty sure we use ketamine legally with farm animals for kind of like a almost like a
Training,
sedation, right?
sedation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically it's like a horse tranquilizer, right? Which means that it can be, depending on the molar density, it can be quite potent, right? But obviously if you're like saturating it, then it's gonna be kind of, mild. So talk to me, can you tell us a little bit about why you chose ketamine as a prescription drug for this type of thing?
Right. So right off the bat, the very first reason we chose ketamine is that in the US, it's the only legal psychedelic, psychoactive
Oh,
mental
okay,
health
okay.
treatment. That's like the simple truth of it. But the more I got to know this particular chemical,
Mhm.
like the more of a hardline enthusiast I am about it. I think it has some very, very unique features that the other, so, there's so many different psychedelics, but we can talk about three major buckets for mental health research, which is sort of like the psilocybin or LSD, very similar molecularly, affinity to the 5-HT2A serotonin
Yes.
receptor. You were a chemist. We can talk about that. Then there's the MDMA bucket. So
Hmm.
both of those are still in clinical trials
Hmm.
and are not FDA approved. And of course, there's like a robust ecosystem of underground work with them. And I'm in total support of that. But this was going to be a legal company. And so we
Mm. You
went
have to
with
be
what was
above board, right?
legally
Yeah.
available.
Mm.
We did. Uh, Ketamine is spectacular. Like, I think it has some features that the other two do not. And they're beautiful medicines. They have potent outcomes. I am not disregarding them at all, but there are some particular reasons why ketamine is really special. So because it's in the class of dissociative anesthetic, as you said, high enough doses, you're out for surgery. Like
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
and it's such a
100%.
medicine, totally. It is such a safe medicine. It's used in battlefield anesthesia. It's used in pediatric surgery. It
Yes.
doesn't depress respiratory or cardiovascular function at all. So it's like one of the safest anesthetics that we actually have. Um, so that's cool. Take it down lower than that, you get to like the K-hole range of things, which typically means an ego death, right? So in neurological terms, that generally means your default mode network, which is the network that is most associated with sense of self,
Mhm.
goes offline. Like those that interconnectivity quiets
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and yeah, like you have this profound sense of your sense of self
Meaningless,
goes
right?
offline. Yeah, egoless. It's very therapeutic for most people. Of course, that can also be like scary and needs to be integrated if people weren't expecting it. But for the
Hmm.
most part, that can be a beautiful and healing experience. Take it down lower, you're getting to the more dissociative and psychedelic experiences that you might consider like most typical of ketamine in terms of what we think.
Mm, mm.
That can be a therapeutic thing too. You can go to your therapist's office, you either do like intramuscular or some rapid dissolve tablets, and you go on a journey. You can set an intention, but ultimately you are at the whim of your mind. Take it down even lower. That's what we're talking about. So
Um,
that is called the psycholytic state, not psychedelic.
mhm.
It's mind loosening. That's lysis, rather than mind manifesting,
Of course.
psychedelic.
Yeah, it's
Um,
no psychoactive components, right? When it's that low.
Well, no, I would say it is psychoactive, but it's not like, yeah, it's
But yeah,
not
but I mean, like,
it's like
yeah,
tipsy. Yeah,
yeah,
your ketamine is
you're not gonna
tipsy.
trip. Yeah, yeah.
No, you're not gonna trip. What you get there? Okay, no, you had a question.
No, I do have a question, and I'm sorry to interrupt. Is there was a look before I get into the questions about neurodivergence, I just really want to. I have to say this. Ketamine, and I agree, ketamine can be used for many amazing things. It's a great slave, but it's a terrible master. And one of the biggest controversies of it, it was Taking Care of Maya, a Netflix documentary that was about a young girl who had a specific, very rare condition where only large doses of ketamine were able to treat this girl's swelling of her legs and get her to be mobile again. But the United States had a huge battle with the parents. Even I think they even incarcerated the mother, and the mother unfortunately ended up ending her life because of this. And it's in it's it's hard watch, but it's a good watch to show how kind of like controlled substances or substances that are deemed dangerous to the mental state can actually help in other ways, but also the control of it is so like, there's so much red tape. It's hard to move, and it's fascinating that you've actually been able to do that. Because I know here in Canada, like we have access to marijuana products in crazy doses. And so
Right.
so I'm a big supporter of like CBG, CBN, CBD. Those are great non psychoactive, uh, I guess medicines for people, especially people with mental health issues. Um, okay, THC is good for certain things. The delta 9 rotation of THC is great for cancer treatment. And as a chemist, and I did study this, only the delta 9 rotation is actually shown to give, the degradation of tumors and things like that. But getting back to the point, how have you found people, or what resistance have you found from people when you say, "Hey, we're going to prescribe ketamine"? Like, what does that look like?
It's really reducing. So ketamine is Schedule 3 in the US. People don't know that. It's actually Schedule 3 means it is less strictly monitored than Adderall, which is in
Yeah,
Schedule 2. And like, how many people do you know
everybody says that.
taking?
Yeah. Well, yeah,
Of course. Me
exactly.
too,
Yeah.
by the way. I was when you were talking, I was like, yeah, I started Adderall recently too, and
Yeah.
it really helped. Um,
Yeah, it's
but
great.
so I think it's becoming more accepted. There's still stigma, but more and more accepted for mental health. People are talking about it on reality shows. I think it was like the Real Housewives mentioned it. Every time something like that happens, our team talk. Oop,
No,
I
I'm
lost
here.
you.
Sorry. No, I'm still here. I just
Okay, good, good,
my
good.
camera
Yeah,
glitched. Yeah. So yeah, the Real
no
Housewives
worries.
talk about
Every time
yeah.
something like that happened, we totally hear about it. We're like, oh, okay, like they talked about it on this TV show on ketamine therapy.
Wow.
The Real Housewives mentioned it. Kim
Which Real
Kardashian,
Housewife?
like
Because I'm friends with one of the Real
I
Housewives.
No, check it out. Ask her. I can go back and look at my notes and because it's all in our like WhatsApp group
No
for our
way.
company. I can look it
I would
up
love
and
to know.
send it
And I
right
tell
to
you,
you.
the reason is
Yeah.
because my friend Jacqueline Lorita, she lives in Vegas now, but she was from New Jersey. So she was in the housewives, the Real Housewives of New Jersey. But her son Nick is on the spectrum. But me and Jacqueline are really good friends, and because kind of connected with the autism thing. But it was really interesting. So I was like, I wonder if she's kind of
I wonder
like
if it's
gone
her.
through this. So
If I remember correctly, it was Atlanta, but I
oh,
don't
okay, the
quote
other
me on
one's
that.
nice.
I
Okay,
will totally send you a message right
yeah, let
after
me
this
know.
and let you know. Yeah.
Um, and I know what kind of. I just want to make sure we get on all the things answered. So,
Yeah,
okay, I'm going to jump to a different question. The question is,
totally.
well, it's a two-part really. What have you found that works with autism, and how have you found the response from autistic individuals whilst taking this type of therapy slash medicine?
Great question. Okay, so we can answer this in two ways. What does the actual published research say? And then what do the people say, right?
Mm,
And
mm,
the published research is emerging and promising, but like not, it's not a robust set of findings. So it's still an area that's being studied. There was at least one study that was meant to look at whether ketamine could be helpful with like social impact of autism, and that did not find it didn't find efficacy. So
mm.
not so much on that front. What has been found to be efficacious is ketamine for the anxiety and depression that can be comorbid
Yeah,
with
100%,
autism.
100%. Yeah,
Right.
because that's cruel.
So
Because
that we have, yeah,
yeah, because the rate of, and I hate to interrupt, but it's really important. The rate of,
you're good.
or the age of death, the average age of death of a level two, level one autistic individual is between 30 and 35, and so I think and that's crazy. As so, I turned 40 this year, so I'm like feeling like I made it, this far, But I'm thinking like, and you're absolutely right. The depression, anxiety, and the low moods because of many other factors. And so how does it specifically help with that? What is the active part or the active site that you see progression in?
So, mechanistically, I can talk to what I know is happening, or what I strongly believe have pieced together is happening for at least the neurotypical mind. Not that that's even a thing. This is just a caveat to say, like, I don't know that there's been any mechanistic study specifically with neurodivergence, but here's what I'm seeing.
Sure.
And by the way, I also want to get back to what I saw on Reddit because I think this is important.
Okay, sorry, yes.
Um, okay, I'll do that first. So,
Okay.
I've had Claude go and scrape Reddits and just be like, talk to me about sentiment of um, people who have used ketamine, specifically not recreationally, but therapeutically, with some intention for like clinical outcome. Tell me what the sentiments are, and then compare if people are also self identified as neurodivergent in some way. Um, the outcomes don't look all that different. There are slight differences. The positive reviews from people with autism are slightly higher. It's over 60% say very positive, whereas it's something like 54% of people say very positive if they're
Well,
neurotypical, as it were.
sure, sure.
Um, but it's a double-edged sword because for some people, there's a really strong negative reaction too. And my understanding of that is that ketamine does, because of its dissociative quality, in these lower doses what you're getting is a partial dissociation. You're still
Okay.
like in your body, identified with your body. It just feels bigger and more spacious, and that can allow for more nervous system sensations to rise to the surface of awareness because
Mm,
they're not being repressed as heavily. Typically there are so many strong mechanism cognitively of repression, of like not feeling the uncomfortable sensations that can like underlie anxiety, depression, trauma. Once that is loosened a little bit through this dissociative piece, a lot of those can come to the surface. And what's great about that is is that they're being experienced with a spaciousness that allows them to resolve and release
in
on their own.
comfort, right? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Correct.
Wow.
That's how it works for most people. You asked me about the mechanism, so we're circling back to that. Essentially, usually we don't want to feel these overwhelming sensations of anxiety, depression, trauma. It feels horrible, and so we
Yeah.
don't. And once we have this spaciousness, this blanket of safety to feel that stuff, we can start to build a new relationship with it.
Mm,
What ketamine does is shift the balance from top down processing, that is taking the world in through our beliefs, to the bottom up, actually
a
attending
viewpoint,
to the
right?
sensory information. Yeah, actually like allowing a reinterpretation of the sensory information,
Wow.
and that can really build new pathways. Now, the interesting thing about autism is that yes, for most people, they report, and you know what? I want to like be clear that
Sure.
there's a positivity bias on Reddit, probably. Probably. I don't
But,
know. Maybe
but
actually maybe
look,
it's the less happy people.
and that's
Who
the thing. If
knows?
it's look, if it's working for humans, it doesn't matter
It's
what the
working.
neurotype is, right?
Correct.
If it
Correct.
works for humans of all neurotypes, then it's only
Yeah.
going to be a win because the autistic individuals are more prone to mental health conditions.
100%.
So it's less about
But
neurodivergence, but
so
more about the mental health, right? Sorry, please, Karen.
what I think might happen with some autistic individuals is that the sensory the sensory information that then becomes more amplified because of the spaciousness is still too overwhelming. It is still too much to process. I actually I saw this firsthand with a friend of mine who was doing like his first dose and wanted me to like be a sitter.
Hmm.
He collapsed. Like he went into a place of such like deep discomfort and overwhelm that I was just kind of like trying to, I was being like very
Right out
nurturing.
the.
Hey, this is going
Hmm.
to end soon. That's a potential. I think it's the minority of people, but it's certainly from like looking at Reddit comments, it happens.
But you don't really
So,
know the percentage until you've tried it on a larger scale, right? Your control group must be tiny
right.
right now.
Yeah, we do look at neurodivergence in our intake form, but we haven't actually done. By the way, if anyone listening is curious to do that analysis, we have a beautiful data set that is being underutilized. But like we haven't really looked at
Yeah, well,
that specifically, and I think it's fascinating and we should. We just don't have the resources to do all the research that we want to do.
yes,
Um,
yes, you will. Um,
yes.
so
Yeah,
just
yeah.
really quickly, how do people get in touch with you and find out more? Because I'm kind of like, I just want to make sure we get that in there before the end of the episode as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, you can always just go to our site, which is joyous.team. But if anyone wants to talk research with me personally, Sharon, which is Sharon, SHARON, at joyous.team, get in touch. I would love to talk to people and see, what we can do to like not underutilize this. This is probably the biggest psychedelic data set in existence. It's
Wow,
90,000 people. So it's pretty cool.
that is a big,
And I
yeah,
don't
it's a
want it
big
to go
spread.
underutilized. Yeah.
I'm fascinating. I'm gonna check
Yeah.
it out as well because um you mentioned like DMT and stuff, and I know that King's College in London, the United Kingdom, are doing a big research on DMT, and I know people who have experienced using DMT
Yeah.
illegally, but
Yeah.
but the data from King's College is really interesting, and so
Mhm.
but I have a really fun question for you. So sorry, Karen, say what you were
Oh,
going to say, and then
absolutely.
when you're ready, I've got the yeah.
I'm good.
Okay. So my question is this: let's take away the use of ketamine. Let's take away the use of any medication. How would you
Yeah.
treat people, knowing what you know, right,
Mhm.
and your background and your philosophy and your current level of education? How would you treat somebody without ketamine?
So I think that in many cases, we're talking about autism specifically,
Autism or people with mental health? Yeah.
or mental health. Okay. So broadly speaking, I think freedom is attained when we learn to feel our feelings from a sense of safety and love. And there are some like foundational things that go into that. There are some skills that are really useful to really build. One of those skills is staying in the body, but also disidentifying from the 100% absolute identification with the body. So you can
Mhm.
stay in the body and at the same time feel yourself to be a little bit bigger. This is like you
Mm.
talked about Buddhist meditations.
Yes.
So much of spacious awareness is
Hmm.
exactly that. And then in
Hmm.
our newer, more spiritually inclined therapies like internal family systems, one of the first things you do is drop into self. Very analogous. And by the way, analogous to the ketamine state too. So
Sure.
it's a state where you're not as identified with thought, right? Like that can happen, but you are the spacious, loving ground that is compassionate and curious and unperturbed, and you're able to do these investigations. Another very fundamental skill set is being able to touch into your own fundamental goodness.
Hmm.
Like so many of us are so convinced that we are unlovable, we're broken, we're damaged, we're unworthy, we're
Yeah.
bad, we did. That's just like that is the real
That default kind of
pandemic.
like, yeah.
But being able to touch into the fact that you came here as an innocent baby just wanting to be loved, and that's still deeply in there, to practice that again and again and again really helps with this kind of investigation. And along with that, you can learn to kind of touch into what Paul Condon, a meditator from the Center for Sustainable Compassion, calls the field of care. Like the
Hmm.
feeling that the universe has compassion for you. And that's
Hmm.
innate. We can learn to touch into that. So they're just basic skills you can have, but once you have more of a sense of safety through understanding your own goodness, through being able to disidentify at least a little bit with the mind and with the uncomfortable sensations, and being able to believe and accept that there is a universal compassion for you,
Yeah.
then you can, with some safety, really learn to feel your feelings, which like is the thing most of us avoid because they're terrifying, because we were overwhelmed as children. We don't want to feel
100%.
that again.
Especially millennials, right? Millennials getting a backhand slaps from the generation beforehand, almost literally sometimes. But
Sometimes, yeah.
yeah, I was the same
Yeah.
growing up. My parents gave me a good old slap when I was like, and of course they didn't know any better because they were grown up from, their parents, and their parents are kind of like
They
from
were
the
doing better than their
1950s.
parents.
Exactly. At
Exactly.
least our parents weren't drunks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
but,
Right.
post World War II, everyone was a drunk, and there's no offense to anybody who's post World War II. But what's really interesting is you're absolutely right. So I coach people one on one. I do like a one on one mentorship with people, and one of the things I tell people, they say this. They say, "Well, if I am loved, if there's universal compassion, if God loves me, then why don't I
Why
feel
am
it?
I
How do I
suffering?
know?" And I say, "Well, look, you just haven't realized it." And they're like, "Oh, wow." I say, "Look," and this is a really simple thing that I do with them. I say, "Well, look, you're a logical person, right? You don't have to believe in God to be a logical person, right?" And I say, "Okay." I say, "Listen, the odds of you being alive are 400 trillion to one." Which means that the fact that you're here is a miracle.
Miracle.
You're a walking
Absolutely.
miracle. There was no mistake. You had to have been here. And like the Buddha says, when you go to
Universe.
bed at night, the whole world shuts down with you. You only know because you think you are, right? When you wake up, the universe is here. And then they go, yeah, okay, but isn't everybody like this? I say, kind of. Out of those 400 trillion to one odds of you actually being born, let's think about your DNA set for a second. And they go, oh, do you know what? I say, you are resilient more than you ever could have imagined, and it's inherent within you. They say, why? I say, look, we've been on this planet 300,000 years, right? And we've survived. Your DNA has gone through ice ages, saber-toothed tigers, global issues, pandemics, world wars, plague, cholera, like, and you're survived. Look, if you go back just 10,000 years, there was a the PETM era, and the PETM era was a bottleneck in human evolution, right? Now, all hominids on this planet, right, no matter if you was Australopithecus, Neanderthal, or Homo sapien, we all came down to 1,000 units in the whole planet. Your DNA was one of 1,000 that survived. Dude, that's almost planetary extinction. Okay,
Right.
yet you survived it and then came to the other side fighting. We've been through like, knights and kings and queens and colonizations and all kinds of stuff, enslaving our own people, horrendous things. Yet you survived. And so people, when I say, when you put that in perspective and you're worrying about stuff like, oh, I have to now look for another job. Well, that's a blessing. If anything, you have the ability to go and do that, right? So, and I think that's what you're saying. Like when people see that bigger picture, when they realize that, when that resonates, it makes it like it makes them kind of go, oh, actually, yeah, maybe I am loved because I am here for that reason. And that's super important. I think it's important anyway.
That's a beautiful framework. I like that.
Thank you.
I like that a
Um,
lot. Yeah.
and I guess like yeah, the other thing is like I do a lot of. Are you familiar with koans?
Yeah.
Sure. So when you were saying about like getting the person to kind of think deeper, using Buddhist koans, and for everybody listening who doesn't know what Buddhist koans are, they're kind of like riddles with no real answer, but they're designed to make you search for an answer so that you then pull up things that you probably didn't even know were sitting in your mind or your beingness, right? And you're like,
Mhm.
oh, and it gets you thinking about things on a bigger scale. It kind of expands your space, if you will. And that expansion of space is like what you said, it allows you a bit more comfort in reality, right? Because we become so closed in. Um, and yeah, so it's all about, to me, it's all about viewpoints. Like so obviously I'm not a licensed doctor, so I don't, therapeutically prescribe medicine, but I do kind of say to people, why don't you try this? Like let's look at stuff, certain viewpoints from other things. And
Right.
it's so interesting. And it was a good answer. So what's the future look like for you and Joyous? Like what are you guys aiming to do? Like what do the next 5 years look like?
Yeah. Well, definitely the landscape all changes if other psychedelic medicines get approved. If MDMA does, at least for 7 years, I believe it's going to be under
What else?
exclusive contract.
Mm,
Fine. We're not going to touch that for at least 7 years if it gets approved tomorrow. So maybe not
Mm.
MDMA, but if psilocybin gets approved, we'll probably end up going down that route as well. Um, we are definitely investing in the relationships we're building with therapists. There's a whole program for Joyous for Therapists where we train them. We put together a beautiful certificate program, like 11.5 continuing education units, which therapists all need,
Wow.
free right now, totally free. So we're
Wow.
trying to invest in that. And we're hoping that through an ecosystem we build, we get to start bearing out um, research on psycholytic therapy. So there's such a robust ketamine literature ecosystem right now, but so little of it is one on these low doses. And right now we are in the final weeks of getting ready to submit our chart review, which would look at about 60,000 patients taking low dose ketamine, which is by far the biggest trial of any psychedelic medicine out there. So we're very excited about that. So one, I'm hoping to make that research set, just like I said to you earlier, available to researchers who want to come with a proposal. Like I want us to make this like just a resource for the psychiatry world to look at.
Mm.
That's one. Another is we're working on putting together. We have a lot of content on our patient platform, like courses, nervous system regulation. So,
Wow.
have to have a healthier relationship with sources of addiction. It's like we have good content, but we haven't packaged it in a way. Most of our patients don't even know it's there, which is one of my greatest frustrations. We
Oh
just
man.
haven't had to like, yeah, we
Yeah.
haven't had the tech bandwidth to really
Yeah. Communicate
create
all of that.
the
Mm.
app. And guess what? Now there's Claude Code and things are moving
It's
faster.
so
So we're
good.
like, finally.
Yeah.
So what I'm hoping to do is to create like one of the most personalized, sophisticated patient profiles. And
Mm.
on the basis of this, that looks at different modalities and different frameworks. Like, I'd love to have some Enneagram assessment in there, attachment strategy assessment. Like, but there's so many interesting things we could put in there. And on that basis, start personally recommending content, exercises, koans, little
Yeah.
contemplations, inquiries to the patients that are well matched to their needs, to their level of consciousness, and to where they want to go. So
100%.
that's the hope. Yeah.
I think you're absolutely right. Like giving more resources to people, especially like, if people are because people right now they're kind of like looking for answers, looking for things and like, is this therapy for me? Is that therapy for me? But if you like if you have a resource platform that allows you to see like, oh, I can see this research or I understand this course is for me, etc., then I think that would be better for everybody involved. In terms of the Claude or Claude Code, that is a great idea because what you actually have then is you have the ability to create an actual accessibility for people outside of the scope of the norm, right? And I think that's cool as hell because it's free
Really.
and
Yes.
it's clever as heck. In terms of the future, it seems very bright for you guys. I think it's very interesting. I'm going to leave a link for everything in the show notes. Please send me all the links that you think are relevant to the resources and any onboarding for people and clients. That'd be amazing. And then I'm gonna keep a close eye on your site because I'm really fascinated to learn more about it. So please let me know, any updates and stuff. Sharon, it's been
Awesome.
amazing. Thank you so much.
It's been so
And
much fun, Daniel. Thank you.
one more time, the website is joyousteam.com.
Nope. Joyous.team.
Joyous.team. Oh my goodness, sorry, my mistake.
Go
Joyous.team.
again.
I will leave it in the show notes and the description of the YouTube video. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
Bye bye.